Are you worried about today's dire financial situation?
Put simply, I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
The storms on Wall Street continue today after regulators seized the assets of Silicon Valley Bank, marking the largest bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis.
Do you worry you'll have enough to pay your mortgage, pay your children's college tuition, enough to retire?
I believe our banking system remains strong.
Regional banks in focus once again today as the market digests the fallout of the First Republic failure.
You have questions, we have answers. It's the Gold Standard with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Thanks for joining us. It is the Gold Standard Radio Show, back together again. Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn. And Ken has a brand new nickname today before we start the show. It is Sensible Ken.
Yes, he's here. Sensible Ken.
Well, you know, it was very funny. When you walked in, you said, just call me Ken. Sensible Ken. And I said, all right, Sensible Ken.
I want to talk to the people today, Jen, on a very personal level, and I want them to think in a very sensible way.
I like that. Because what else? Okay, if you don't have anything, sensibility is where you need it. Just common sense, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Why adding gold and precious metals to your investment portfolio makes just good sense. It's common sense. Sensible Ken is here. But before we look forward at this week's program, we always have to look back to how we got into this mess. And it all started back in 1971 with our buddy, President Richard Nixon, who decided he would try an experiment, right? He would take the dollar, he would take the gold backing behind it, and here we go, fiat currency
temporarily.
was born. Right. So
we're still on it.
We're exactly.
Yeah, temporarily.
Just temporarily, forever. That's all.
Yeah.
So Richard Nixon is here with us. He joins us in studio just to kind of comment on this big decision he made back in 1971.
I am going to suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold. It's the birth of fiat money. It's going to be a money printing party, and guess what? You're not invited. But, I mean, that's what we're dealing with, Jen. I mean, when I say to people, what's a sensible way to look at our money? Mm-hmm. It's money that's backed by nothing.
Right.
It used to be backed by gold, tangible assets. Now there's other parts of the world that are getting together and backing currencies with real tangible assets. In the meantime, we're spending money like there's no tomorrow.
Right.
We have debt out the wazoo. And I think any sensible person who's listening to Sensible Ken today would have to say to themselves, well, this could end very badly.
Right.
What could I do to protect a part of my nest egg? So no matter what happens, I know I'll at least have that. Now, doesn't that sound sensible, Jen?
That sounds sensible, Ken, especially when there's a whole lot of people operating around us, a whole lot of things happening around us that don't make a lot of sense. And the spending is one of them. I mean, look, you don't have to be an economist. You don't have to be a financial advisor to know that you can't spend more than you have, or at least if you have a plan to bring on debt, that you have a plan to pay that debt off.
Well, yeah.
Everybody
and that's a
knows
good point,
that,
Jen.
right?
Yeah, that's a good point. What's the title of today's show? Oh, gold is over $2,000 an ounce. So at the same time, you know, the price of gold is reflecting that things are heating up and things are coming together. And I had a little bit of a note here on our debt. The Biden administration has added $4.6 trillion in debt since taking office, and the pace is actually increasing, not decreasing. They added almost $1 trillion in new debt between the first quarter 2023 and second quarter 2023. Over the next 10 months, Jen, from June 1st, 2023 to March 31st of 2024, the government will have added $2.85 trillion, let's call it $3 trillion, let's just round it up, to the marketable debt. So central banks are owning gold, they're buying gold, and the governments of the world are printing money and they're pushing their fiat paper on us citizens. That's losing tremendous value, losing purchasing power, and gold is something that we can do about that. What
Absolutely.
Can we hold on to? What's sensible, real money?
855-322-4653. That's the number to call Midas Gold Group. If you've been thinking about gold, it is the sensible thing to do. Now is the time. 855-322-4653. 855-322-GOLD. There's also a brand new text line. If you prefer to text, text the word gold to 232425. Text the word gold to 232425. You can also go online, MidasGoldGroup.com. And if you have to, or if you happen to be in either Thousand Oaks, California, or the surrounding areas, or Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
Used to be.
The
It
great
looks a lot.
state of
It
Arizona.
looks a lot like California because California has run to Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in Phoenix or in Thousand Oaks and you want to do this in person, you can go into Midas Gold Group and do this face to face. This isn't a call center. You can get real help, real sensible solutions to the problems that are facing you and us because the government spending is out of control. We know the banks are in crisis. If you want to take power back, you do it with gold and precious metals.
Yeah, and that's one thing, Jen, that's very important. Most of the gold dealers out there, I mean, they don't want people coming into the store, and that's one of the things that we offer our clients to look at real gold, just like this coin here.
You got show and tell for us. Tell us about that one.
Now, this coin, 1986, President Reagan started the American Eagle, product line.
It's a beautiful coin.
It's the 1 ounce gold eagle. Comes in fractional sizes and also a 1 ounce silver eagle. There's a $50 denomination on here, but obviously that's because it's real money, but it's not worth $50. It's worth the weight and the purity of the gold itself. And actually, just to give you an idea how not sensible people are, there's a gentleman on YouTube that was walking around with a gold coin. And he said, well, I need the money. I'll take $50 for this coin to people. And people would look at it, and he said, we can go over to that coin dealer right there, and we can verify that it's a legitimate product, but I want $50 for this gold coin, and I'll exchange it, to you.
Yeah.
And every single person said, no, well, I'll just keep the $50.
What a deal. How much is that worth?
I mean, this is like a $2,200 gold coin based on today's gold price.
Unbelievable.
So, but that just goes to show you that the banking system and the government is going to do whatever it takes to keep the dollar, to keep the banking system, to keep the markets attractive, and to keep the price of gold subdued. Because when gold is at $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 an ounce, which is a huge move from where we are today, a lot of people are going to want to take their money out of the banks and they're going to want to take it out of the markets because we all know that our paper money is losing significant value.
Right.
They don't want that because obviously
when
we take our money out of the banks, our money's not there, folks. Let's be sensible about this. I hope we understand it's a fractional banking system. And not to mention, if there's more sellers in the markets than there are buyers, the prices of all those assets are going to go down tremendously. So, you don't have to comply with that thinking.
I want you to really underscore this because I think it is such an important point. And this is Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo, Jennifer Horn, Midas Gold Group. If you need gold, if you're looking at this, if you have questions, maybe you need a new dealer, 855-322-4653. That's 855-322-GOLD. You can also text gold to 232425. But Ken, what you said is so important. The government they want to downplay gold because they want to continue the lie that your money is safe, that it's in the system. That's what they tell us all the time. They've got it. Sure, we can afford another war. Sure, we can afford all of this spending. But we all know the sensibility, since that's a theme, makes us know that that's impossible, that at some point there is going to be a problem. At some point, the system will collapse. And so do you trust the government to make all of those choices for you to hold on to your money because you may want to access it and it's not going to be there?
Yeah, and if the system doesn't collapse, Jen, there's only one way that it doesn't collapse. And it means that we're going to have to print tens or if not hundreds of trillions of dollars more out of thin air.
And then what does that do to the value of the dollar?
Well, that's right. So that's why the central banks are stuck and the governments, they keep spending. If they stop, then obviously the economy and the markets crash.
Right.
If they continue and go exponential, which is more than likely, especially since there's a election coming up in 2024, that means that the dollar is going to continue to lose significant purchasing power and value.
Right.
And there's going to be severe inflation, much higher inflation than even what we have now.
And we already feel it. How painful is it now? Imagine when it's worse.
Even they lie about the numbers and even they skew them to make them seem like it's not going down.
Right.
I read an article yesterday that Connecticut McDonald's are selling Big Mac meals for $18. So the point is how could you hold some of your wealth How could you protect some of your wealth? How could you be sensible about what's going on here? How could you not be financially ruined when things fall apart, fold up like a cheap suit? Because I have to be honest with you. I think that that's inevitable. It's an inevitable result.
And even if it's not, as you mentioned, the inflation rate, think about what you just said. $20 is not worth what $20 used to be worth,
That's right?
I mean, watch old TV shows and you're going to see they were buying things for much less. They were buying houses for hundreds of dollars or $1,000. Now we're buying them for millions of dollars. That gold that you're holding up today, Ken, that has done nothing but over time go up and up and up and up, right? That $50 gold piece is now worth well over $2,000.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a big difference if you held paper assets in a bank account like cash or if you hold gold. Now, obviously, there are some opportunities out there, as always, in real estate or stocks, but I would tell you that nobody's really making any money on their stocks in the last couple of years. And there's a pretty good case that over the next 5 or 10 years, it's going to get very, very difficult to do so. Yeah. Not to mention a lot of the bonds, which were supposed to be some of the safest investments ever, most of the 30-year bonds in the last 2 or 3 years are down 40, 50%. So safety is very important. Mm-hmm. And I think there's places to put our money that are safe are running out. And I think that gold is one of the few places that's safe. But not to mention, people have to prepare, Jen, for the end of fiat money. Yeah. Our fiat money system throughout the whole world and here in the United States is inevitably blowing up and ending. That same experiment that started by President Nixon in 1971 is blowing up. The question is you don't want to lose all of your money when that happens. You don't want to be financially destroyed. Gold and silver, Jen, will allow you to participate in the next financial system, whenever that is.
Look at sensible Ken.
That's very sensible.
It is very sensible. And it's all about taking a piece of your money, that money that you've worked so hard for, that you want to be able to have as you get older, that you might be relying on for retirement. You want to pull that aside, keep it in your own possession, in your own safe, at home. It's personal responsibility. Don't comply, as you said, with what the government is telling you. 855-322-4653 for Midas Gold Group. 855-322-GOLD. 855-322-GOLD. MidasGoldGroup.com. You can also text the word gold to 232425. 855-322-4653. It's a Gold Standard Radio Show. There's more up ahead with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Dr. Gorka here. You're listening to The Gold Standard with your hosts, Ken Russo from veteran-owned Midas Gold Group and Jennifer Horn. Owning private money in the form of physical gold and silver is perhaps more important than ever to your long-term financial security. As U.S. banks fail, the Biden administration sends hundreds of billions abroad while depleting our strategic oil reserves. However, the biggest financial threat may be coming from within: central bank digital currency. The patents have been filed and the big banks have released plans for implementation. Midas Gold Group sees tyrannical implications: the end of cash, the end of financial privacy, big government able to see your every purchase. Could there be ties to social credit? Hear more commentary on the political and economic issues that affect your financial security right here on the Gold Standard. You can create your own Gold Standard with a call to Midas Gold Group, 855-322-GOLD. That's 855-322-4653, MidasGoldGroup.com.
Thanks for joining us and welcome back. It's the Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn back together again. And I love Ken today.
Sensible Ken.
His new persona is Sensible Ken. I like it.
He's here.
You're like Barbie and Sensible Ken.
So sensible.
All right. So, Sensible Ken, let me ask you this sensible question.
Okay.
And test your sensibilities. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about the banking crisis already in the program, and you said there are probably more banks that could be collapsing on the way. But it's
what a horrifying
how many
thought.
Already this year? 6 already today?
Well,
this year?
I mean, 6 that they admitted to.
Right.
Who knows? I mean, my contention is they've already all collapsed. and they're just kind of slow walking the inevitable. What kind of fake program that they have? How many hundreds of billions of dollars are they giving these banks to keep them afloat? But that's kind of how I feel. That's how even sensible Ken feels.
Even sensible Ken feels that way.
Yes.
Not cynical Ken, sensible Ken.
Sensible Ken still is a little leery of the banking system.
Yes.
Sensible Ken is still, convinced that these banks are still underwater on their bonds and they're still underwater on their commercial real estate. A lot of these buildings are half full.
Yeah.
Sensible Ken is very scared about the unrealized losses at these banks and fractional banking system. We all showed up at the bank at the same time. Our money's not there.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the question. And that leads us to just how safe our money is right now sitting in a bank, because I can guarantee you dollars to donuts. And I'm not a betting woman.
I love donuts.
Well, I'm saying if we had dollars to donuts, and dollars aren't worth much. So donuts might be the currency.
Yes.
How safe is our money? Because most of us have our money in the bank, or at least some kind of bank, whether it's a credit union or whatever.
And I would say credit unions are not as leveraged and they don't trade as much in derivatives that the big commercial banks do. So probably there's a more of a level of safety when it comes to the credit unions. But if you're doing business and you're looking for large transactions, they're of no help. The large banks, in my opinion, are the most toxic, because these are the banks that the majority of people depend on for safety of their money. But these are the banks and the institutions that control the most risk, because the government allows these banks to trade these derivatives. And when you talk about $58 trillion of derivatives by J.P. Morgan Chase.
That's a lot.
$57 trillion of derivatives Goldman Sachs. $55 trillion Citibank, $23 trillion Bank of America, $15 trillion Wells Fargo, $208 trillion of derivatives by these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 banks. Now, eventually something's going to go wrong.
Yeah, and those numbers, it's hard to even hear those numbers
Right.
because our little human brains don't even consume just how much that is.
Well, not to mention there's 4,500 banks. These
Right.
are 5. And hedge funds and pension funds, and globally, all over the world, it's a huge time bomb.
Yeah.
So for somebody who has a bunch of money at the bank, first of all, it's not safe. It could disappear. It could be hacked. It's going to lose value. You're not getting any interest on it. If it's not for living expenses, or if it's not for expenses for a company, what exactly is it there for? So that the bank could lend it out, so that the bank could make money on it?
Yeah, and that's most of us just say, well, it's safe. It's safe
I mean,
there.
it's
but
nice to go to bed at night and know, well, I have, a few
Yeah.
$100,000 in the bank. I'm sure that maybe someone like yours, maybe it's even much
Oh,
more
please,
than
I
that.
have it. I have a money vault, actually.
But I would have to ask anybody who's sensible, why on earth would you be in that situation? The same thing with the stock market. Stocks aren't going up anymore. Now, we're not giving financial advice. We're not financial advisors. We would ask everybody to do their own due diligence. But the writing's been on the wall the last few years. Bonds are going down tremendously. Real estate seems like it's just kind of capped. It's probably in a bubble. We'll see what happens, right? And stocks, which has been carried by like 7 to 10 names over the last couple of years, people aren't making any money on their stocks anymore. They're actually losing money. So what do you think is going to happen? Number one, it almost seems like the government's trying to destroy our economy. Maybe it's on purpose. Maybe it's just out of stupidity. Who knows?
Or both. Maybe a little
maybe
of both.
Or maybe they're just in a spending hole that's so big they have no choice. They just have to keep it going for the reasons that we spoke about before. But wouldn't it be sensible to have some of that bank balance or some of that stock or IRA balance or 401k balance in a tangible asset like gold and silver? The whole world is moving towards tangible assets. There's a grassroots movement towards gold and silver. I mean, I don't understand what we have to say for people to understand that they're hedging their bets. They're giving themselves a better chance to protect what they've worked so very hard for, and they're not totally reliant on a system that's dying.
Yeah.
And money that's falsely being propped up, and banks that are falsely being propped up by a government that can't stop spending, that's printing money out of thin air.
It's something real you can hold on to.
Yeah, and I can't understand why. Well, I mean, I don't fault people. I mean, they have to be educated on it, but I would ask people to be very reasonable about what's going on, and I would ask them to have urgency. I would ask them to not be complacent, and I would tell them that they still have an opportunity now to move those IRAs, still have a chance to move those old 401ks, still have a chance to move some of their deposits into gold. It's in your possession. No matter what happens, you have it, and we'll deal with things a few years down the road after we've imploded.
And this is what is really important to understand. You don't have to pull everything out of the banking system, but if you have an IRA or a 401k, or if you have some money that's sitting in a bank that's not really earning you any money, I mean, this seems like the thing to do to hedge your bets against a system that is inevitably failing. We've gone through the reasons. We don't know the timeline. It's not about predictions here. You just realize things are going in the wrong direction. And so if you are thinking about making a move, call Midas Gold Group right now. You will talk to real people, not a call center. You can do it face-to-face in Thousand Oaks, California, or in Phoenix, Arizona, or you can call always 855-322-4653, 855-322-GOLD, 855-322-GOLD. MidasGoldGroup.com is the website for more information. But do yourself a favor, do it now, or you can text GOLD to 232425 and someone will get back to you.
Yeah, right, Jen, and if I had to summarize something, I would just say that the world is losing trust in the United States. They see what's going on.
It's sad.
They see our leadership. They see how much money is spending. They see the deficits. They're losing money. They're losing confidence in our bonds. They're losing confidence in our dollar. They want to do business between themselves. And I don't blame them. We've created this situation, but just because the government's dropped the ball and continues to drop the ball, that doesn't mean we have to be wiped out.
If our adversaries are going in the direction of gold, why wouldn't you?
The central banks they're not dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, and they're all buying gold, but obviously they're pushing printed paper on their citizens. But I would say to you, you don't have to comply with that. You don't have to. It almost feels to me like if I leave my money in the bank or if I leave it in the markets, I'm helping the bad guys.
Yeah.
And I think that the good guys, I firmly believe the good guys are going to come in. They're going to clean this up somehow, and we're going to start fresh. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of pain before that happens. And the thing is, we want to stay financially intact during that process as things are torn down, and gold and silver will allow people, Jen, to stay financially intact.
Yeah.
Now, doesn't that sound sensible?
It sounds totally sensible. Don't put all your trust into the big banks. Don't put all your trust into government officials. Don't put all your trust into a system that looks like it is failing. Take the personal responsibility to take gold at home, precious metals as well. Silver is a great investment. These are all things that you can look at Midas Gold Group, 855-322-4653. And we haven't even talked about the element of privacy because gold and precious metals still a private transaction. So if you're worried about government oversight, this is a completely private, one of the only private things left.
Or if you don't want to support their agendas.
Right.
Maybe you don't want to support climate change or ESG or, wokeness.
Sensible Ken doesn't like ESG.
Well, I would like for us to take care of our people and the situations here in the United States. And I would like our government to be sensible. But since they're not, we have to take matters sometimes into our own hands. And I would say, gold and silver is financially taking responsibility for what you've worked very hard for. And like I said, no matter what, you'll at least own that.
Don't let someone else ruin what you have worked hard to accumulate, your wealth, your earnings, your legacy for your family. Call Midas Gold Group today. You can go in face-to-face. We've talked about this. There are storefronts in Thousand Oaks, California, and in Phoenix, Arizona. You can also call 855-322-4653, 855-322-GOLD, 855-322-4653. You can text as well if that is more your thing. All you have
we didn't even mention global tension, war. The money runs out on November 17th. We didn't even mention any of this. There's so many reasons right now, Jen. We're reaching a tipping point. There's so many reasons why people right now to be very careful. They need to run for cover. Text GOLD to 232425 or call 855-322-4653, always at MidasGoldGroup.com. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a Gold Standard Radio Show with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.